Hello, I'm Jamie Younger, and this is If You Knew Me, a podcast about the inner lives of women. Every week, we walk into the heart and mind of one woman. Every guest can choose to share her real name or to stay anonymous. This week, we hear from Emma. That's her pseudonym. Emma is Dutch, which means that her English sounds wonderfully exotic. Nevertheless, her story is relatable to so many of us. Since childhood, Emma has suffered from intense and sometimes debilitating anxiety. As a kid, she had the notion that she was about to die of all kinds of rare and unlikely causes. And as an adult, she still feels like she might die each day, but she has found a way to live. Her story is entitled, I Die Every Day.
If you knew me, if you really knew me, then you'd know that there's more underneath that smile or underneath that cheery appearance. Then you would know that I die every day a few times. I have been dying since I was 11, I think. I have an anxiety disorder since as long as I can remember. And I was diagnosed when I was 15. But I've always been a worried child. One of my earliest memories of being worried was when I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old at school. We were talking about the universe, or actually not the universe, about the solar system. And we were going to build this box with this hole in it, and then you would look through this hole and you could see the entire solar system, right? We would have to create these planets, Earth and Mars and Venus and everything. And we would sit in a circle. And the teacher was showing us things about our solar system. And she asked us what we thought about it or what we knew about it. And I had an older brother who had an obsession with anything about the universe. He grew up having all sorts of obsessions, and he would be into planes and knew all the technical details. And then he'd be into some sort of animal species, and then he knew everything about that. And one of his things was the solar system and the universe. He actually became an astronomist later on. So that's how I knew quite a lot about the universe already at that age. So I was sitting there and the teacher was asking us what we knew. And I knew that the sun was actually a star and the sun would die at some point in time. The sun was going to die. I knew that the universe was constantly expanding, or we can't measure that, but that there's like the whole theory of the expanding universe. So I was sitting there and I was always quite extrovert in class, and I was always the one with the hand up. So of course I was gonna tell my part of what I knew. And then I said, well, I don't like thinking about the solar system. I don't like thinking about the universe. It scares me that it's never ending and it's expanding, and it makes us so insignificant. And I remember the teacher sitting there looking at me, and also the other kids looking at me, and there was this silence. And then the teacher said, yeah, I can imagine thinking about that would be scary. But that was the first time I realized, okay, so not everybody is worried about things like this all the time. This always stuck with me. Like, I felt so much more worried than any other kids were. I remember just grazing my hand. I was touching a cactus with it by accident, and there were green needles on my hand. I remember looking at them and not thinking they were needles, but I was sort of convinced that I was having green hair on my hand. There was something very wrong with me, that my hair was just turning green right now, and this must have been a disease, and I was gonna die. And then this was also around 8 or 9 years old. I would almost immediately, my thoughts would always go to the worst thing possible. Like, it must be a disease, or I must be going crazy, or there's something wrong with me. But very quickly, by the teacher's response, by the children's response, or I realized that it's not something you would want to share if you want people to think you're normal. I remember my dad and my mom talking about my aunt. Yeah, she's crazy. She always overthinks. She thinks she's sick or she thinks she's going to die. So you can't really take her seriously. They were talking to each other about that. But I was like, oh, but I'm the same. So maybe I should keep this to myself because it's kind of crazy to think that. And so I can't remember being a worry-free child. I was very cheery, had friends, and it did well in school. And it's not that people would be worried about me, like, oh, she's very silent, or there must be something wrong with her, or she's very in her thoughts, or no, nobody would even guess. I was always reading a lot like as a kid. And in the library, I liked to pick out books that were like about death, in a children's way, like Mommy is Never Coming Home. And I would read those books as a sort of morbid obsession with death. Or maybe if I read enough about it, it wouldn't scare me anymore. I don't know. I was really into those things. Saying this, why didn't my mom know? Why didn't she go like, this is a very strange kid. Why is she reading books about Mommy not coming home? But she had more than one kid, so probably had a lot on her mind. Anyway, at 10, 11, 12, there was a mom who committed suicide. There was a teacher who drowned. My grandmother died from cancer. Another person I knew was very sick. So the risks that I was always thinking of in my head became more of a reality. By that time, my aunt also was diagnosed with a melanoma. So that was something that could be inherited. So that's by that time, I would be obsessed with all my birthmarks. I would count them every day or every night. Whenever I needed some sort of consolation, I would count my birthmarks and be like, okay, there's still like 31 of them. Still look the same. I think we're okay right now. And there's other checks I also did. I would pull my hair to see if it was still stuck to my head, because I once saw on television a person with cancer was losing her hair. So pulling my hair was also a trick that I had. And also I was very afraid of brain damage, getting dementia at an early age. So what I would used to do is I'd write down a very complex sentence at the beginning of the day, and I would force myself to know the sentence word by word at the end of the day. So there were all kinds of things that I would incorporate into my routines to have more control feeling about being sick or not being sick. I was 11 years old. I was in a car with my mom driving home from school, and she told me that this person we knew, he was dying of cancer and he was going to die soon. And then I just started crying. I just couldn't keep it in anymore. And I was like, but Mom, I'm also going to die of cancer. I'm also very sick. I'm dying. And then my mom was like, oh, here's my 11-year-old daughter telling me she's going to die. Something's really off here. And that was the first time I shared with my parents my fears. I think the next day or maybe the week after, we were at an institute that specializes in adolescent problems. And they assessed me and they were like, we can't help her anymore. You have to really go to a psychologist. So very shortly after that, I started going to the psychologist. This was from age 11 till 16, I think, bi-weekly or every week, or just there were a lot of appointments. And a lot of boring conversations, and I was not knowing what I was doing there, and I was not really into sharing my inner life, so to say, with them, especially because they weren't sharing anything back. Because if I asked them if they were married, or can you imagine, because maybe you have children, they would never answer those questions because it was private. And I remember thinking, okay, so here I am, you're asking me to open up and tell you everything, and I know nothing about you. No, I wasn't really into that, By the time my parents knew, I would share with them a lot more about when I was scared. my panic attacks, I wouldn't hide them from them anymore. So I remember me running around the houses one time and yelling at them, yelling at my brothers. I don't know you. I don't know who you are. I don't know why we're family. I don't know what's happening. I was thinking about just how strange conversations between people are. I was just losing all sense of reality. And I had those panic attacks quite often. Also, there's one time I was convinced that I had pooped out my tailbone. I was really convinced that I did that and that I would go blind or sick or whatever. And I remember asking my mom to come with me and maybe if she could feel if my tailbone was still there. And I remember my mom being like, looking at me and being so desperate for what is wrong and just almost begging me to believe her when she said that this is not possible. What you are thinking is not possible. I was still going to school and nobody knew around me, just only my parents and even my brothers. When I talk about it, they don't remember me being sick that way. But I can't imagine they didn't know because I was running around the house, quote unquote, like a crazy person. This therapy wasn't really helping me, and being scared wasn't really helping me. I was starting to watch a lot of Dr. Phil Oprah. And not to say that they saved my life, but things they said sort of resonated with me. And also by that time, I was 15 or 14, 15. I read a book, a Dutch book, Prinsesje Nooit Genoeg. And it goes on about how people in their early 20s or whatever are all struggling with life and what's the purpose of it, and depression maybe and anxiety. And the main character in the book sort of feels like she's the only one worrying. She's the only one having anxiety. She's the only one aware of the, not the lightness of being, but the opposite of that, the heaviness of being. Like she can't understand her friends who are falling in love or worried about shopping, or she's just like, there's no purpose to it all. Everything just feels heavy. And I could sort of relate to that main character. And I remember that main character having a conversation with her friends where her friends were all like, you're not special thinking these things. We're all thinking these things, but we also need to make the most of our lives. You can choose to be heavy-hearted and stay in your bed and be scared every day, all day, the rest of your life, or you can take control and just choose another direction. And that really resonated with me because I could also have a hard time relating to my peers falling in love or enjoying simple things. Even though I had friends and I engaged with them, sometimes I would be like, oh, how could you worry about this? Don't you know the sun is going to die someday? Don't you know you could be having cancer right now? I really can't worry about your boyfriend not texting you back right now because I might be dying. I sort of felt like they were into, these small things and I was seeing the bigger picture. So this one night I was lying in bed again, awake because I was afraid to sleep. Because if you sleep, you can't help yourself if you're dying, because then you'll just slip away slowly. And so sleeping was not something I was very into. And they even tried to give me sleep medication, but I was so afraid to sleep that I fought the sleep medication and ended up not sleeping, just being really tired from the medication. I think it was 4:45. I got out of bed, I got the dog, and I started running. Just me and a dog. I just started running. I was like, I'm over this. I'm not going to do this anymore. This is not going to be my life. Where day in, day out, I'm just going to be scared. I don't want to do this anymore. And then I sort of realized that my thoughts are my own, that I can control them, and that I could be worried for maybe like 30 minutes a day. And the rest of the day, I would force myself to focus on different things. try to get my life back. From the outside, it looked like I had a life, but it didn't feel like it. I had no idea how to survive in this mode, how to ever grow up, how to ever grow old, being worried every single day. So I was running with my dog and decided that this was it. I was going to try and change, try to turn things around. And I remember like a few weeks after that, I felt the sun on my skin. And it was so long ago that I felt the sun on my skin, just literally removing these walls and stepping outside again, really being there, being present, being able to look people directly into the eye, not being afraid that they would see through me and see how scared I was or how crazy I actually was. Just being present again, feeling the sun. I felt like I was back again. And then by that time, I also had a diagnosis from the psychiatrist. He told me you have ADHD with an anxiety disorder, which happens a lot. It's quite common. And this is your life. This is going to be your life. There is nothing you can do to cure this. Quite harsh message to give somebody who's 15 years old. But I think in the end, he was right that this was going to be my life. And the anxiety is still there. And sometimes it gets worse. And sometimes it puts me behind these walls. And sometimes I can't look people in the eye because I'm too scared. And sometimes it consumes me. And I'm afraid to eat chicken because it'll give me salmonella. And I'm afraid to drink water from the tap because it'll give me another disease. And I'm afraid to sometimes even bend over because it gives me a sort of a tingly feeling, which means, you know, my aneurysm in my head is going to explode because I always have this aneurysm in my head. Or well, whatever you can think of. There's this, the fear is still there. I cannot go outside and enjoy the stars. I will never be able to do that. But I have my own life now. And the fear is a part of it, which I've tried to accept. You know, some people say you need to embrace it. I don't know if I can do that. It's a journey, but I've learned to accept it. And it's still not something I share with a lot of people. Still afraid that they'll look at me like they did when I was 8 years old. But it's now under control. And I don't have to have any medication for it. And I never have. I've always been able to battle it with my head. So yeah, if you really knew me, then you would know that sometimes when we talk, I might seem present. But on the inside, I'm thinking that my aneurysm just bursted and I'm falling down any minute. And these are my last seconds. And I'm thinking about what are my last words going to be? Yeah, I would like some cheese with that. So yeah, if you really knew me, you would know that I have an anxiety disorder and sometimes it's crippling. Sometimes it's hard to get out of bed. And other days, I barely even know it's there.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. If Emma's story spoke to you, please share it. Now, if you're anything like me, you love to get mail. I also love to send mail. Recently, I thought that it would be fun to send a postcard to our show listeners every Sunday, sort of a short and sweet thing. My Sunday postcards are sent via email, of course, but it does in fact look like a real postcard. So if getting a fun postcard on Sundays would make you smile, I invite you to sign up. Just find the link in the show notes. Also, I want to let you know that we are hosting our first ever online retreat this fall. The retreat is open to anyone, but monthly members of this show will receive a free ticket. The retreat will be focused on meditation, breath work, and prayer. So if you are in need of a soulful, mindful break from the constant noise of life, I encourage you to join us. Sign-ups will start in August. If you're currently a member or you become a member before September 1st of this year, you'll get a free ticket. I hope you join us. The links for everything I mentioned are in the show notes. This podcast is produced by me, Jamie Younger, and my husband, Pete Herkmans. Thanks so much for listening to If You Knew Me. We'll be back with you next week.